In a small town by a mysterious lake, legends of a terrifying aquatic creature have persisted for generations. However, few take these tales seriously, until a series of inexplicable disappearances begin to shake the community. A skeptical young journalist, Amanda, decides to investigate the case, not realizing she is about to plunge into a nightmare that will challenge everything she believes to be real. The waters of Dark Lake always held secrets. Its black, mirror-like surface reflected the night sky like a portal to another world, while its unfathomable depths fueled the imaginations of the residents of Misty Valley for generations. It was a late autumn afternoon when Amanda Smith arrived in town. The cold wind carried dry leaves and whispers of a story that few dared to tell aloud. The 28-year-old journalist, known for her staunch skepticism and relentless pursuit of truth, had no idea she was about to dive into the most terrifying case of her career. Misty Valley had always been a quiet town, where time seemed to flow as slowly as the lake's waters on a windless day. But in recent weeks, an air of unease hung over the cobblestone streets and faded Victorian houses. 3 people had disappeared without a trace, all near Dark Lake. Amanda parked her rental car in front of the town's only inn. As she grabbed her suitcase from the trunk, she felt a chill run down her spine. For a moment she had the distinct feeling of being watched. She turned quickly but saw only the placid waters of the lake in the distance, reflecting the orange twilight sky. Nonsense, she muttered to herself, shaking her head. After all, wasn't that why she was here? To debunk another urban legend, another baseless horror story. Little did she know that in the depths of Dark Lake, something ancient and hungry had just awakened. Something that would challenge everything Amanda thought she knew about the world. And soon, it would turn her quest for truth into a desperate fight for survival. As night fell over Misty Valley, the shadows seemed to stretch like black fingers reaching for the town. And in the lake's waters something moved, patient and relentless, waiting for the right moment to emerge and claim its next victim, certainly. Let's proceed with the next topic, the local legend. Here is the continuation of the narrative. The old church bell chimed 9 times, its sound echoing through the deserted streets of Misty Valley. Exhausted from the trip, but unable to curb her journalistic curiosity, Amanda decided to visit the local bar, the Rusty Hook. The establishment was a perfect reflection of the town, worn by time, but with an air of mystery hanging in the air like cigarette smoke. As she entered, Amanda felt all eyes turn to her. The hum of conversation ceased for a moment, as if she had interrupted a shared secret. She sat at the bar and ordered a local beer. The bartender, a middle-aged man with eyes that seemed to have seen too much, served her in silence. It was then that Amanda heard a raspy voice behind her. "You're not from around here, missy. You're here for the monster, aren't you?" Turning, Amanda found herself facing an elderly man. His eyes, though clouded by cataracts, shone with a disturbing intensity. "My name is Amanda Smith. I'm a journalist," she introduced herself. Extending her hand, the old man ignored it. "I'm Ezekiel, and you shouldn't be here," he murmured, his voice laden with a dark warning. Amanda leaned in, intrigued. "Why do you say that, Mr. Ezekiel? What do you know about these disappearances?" The old man let out a bitter laugh. "Disappearances? Is that what they call it now? No, missy. Those poor souls were taken, just like my grandfather 60 years ago." The entire bar seemed to hold its breath. Amanda felt the weight of the silence, heavy with fear and long-buried secrets. "Tell me more," she urged, her journalistic instincts sharp. Ezekiel hesitated, glancing around as if he feared being overheard by unwanted ears. Then, leaning closer to Amanda, he began to whisper, The creature in the lake is ancient, older than this town, older than our stories. The natives who lived here before us feared and revered it. They called it the Soul Devourer. Amanda felt a chill run down her spine, but remained skeptical. And what does this creature look like? Ezekiel's eyes widened, reflecting an ancient and deep terror. No one knows for sure. Some say it's like a giant serpent with black scales that absorb the light. Others speak of tentacles extending from the depths, dragging their victims into the abyss. But everyone agrees on one thing: its eyes. Eyes that glow in the darkness like embers from hell. The old man paused, swallowing hard. My grandfather. He saw it. The night he disappeared, he screamed about glowing eyes in the water. No one believed him. The next day, we only found his empty boat drifting on the lake. Amanda felt a knot form in her throat. Part of her wanted to dismiss it as the ravings of a superstitious old man, but something in his voice, in his eyes, made her doubt her own convictions. And now, Ezekiel continued, his voice barely a whisper, it has awakened again, and it's hungry. At that moment, the bar's lights flickered, plunging the room into momentary darkness. When they returned, Ezekiel had disappeared, leaving Amanda alone with her doubts and a growing fear of what might be lurking in the lake's dark waters. The next morning dawned grey and cold, with a thick mist hanging over Dark Lake. Amanda awoke to the distant sound of sirens, an unusual noise in the quiet, misty valley. She dressed quickly and headed out, determined to find out what was happening. Following the sound, she arrived at the lake shore, where a small crowd had already gathered. Police were cordoning off an area near a small, weathered wooden pier. Amanda approached, her heart racing as she saw an overturned fishing boat floating near the shore. What happened here? She asked a middle-aged woman who was watching the scene with wide, fearful eyes. It's old Tom, the woman replied, her voice trembling. He went out fishing last night and didn't come back. Amanda felt a chill run down her spine. Tom? Was he an experienced fisherman? The woman nodded vigorously. He knew this lake like the back of his hand. He's been fishing here for over 40 years. It doesn't make sense. At that moment, a police officer approached the crowd. Please, everyone, stay calm. We are doing everything we can to locate Mr. Tom. Amanda stepped forward, showing her press badge. Officer Amanda Smith, from the Metropolitan Gazette. Can you give us more information about the disappearance? The officer hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the presence of the press. Look, we don't have much to say at the moment. Mr. Tom's boat was found this morning by another fisherman. There are no signs of a struggle or accident. It's as if he simply evaporated. The officer's words sent a wave of apprehensive murmurs through the crowd. Amanda noticed nervous glances being exchanged, as if a dark secret was about to come to light. This is the third disappearance in less than a month, isn't it? Amanda pressed, her journalistic instinct sharp. The officer frowned. We can't confirm if there is any connection between the cases. Please do not spread unfounded rumors. But Amanda could feel the palpable fear in the air. The people around her began to disperse quickly, as if fearing that staying too close to the lake for too long might attract some malevolent force. As she watched the divers prepare to begin their search, Amanda couldn't get Ezekiel's words from the previous night out of her mind. The legend of the lake monster, once dismissed as a tale to scare tourists, was beginning to gain a shadow of credibility in her mind. Suddenly, a piercing scream cut through the air. One of the divers who had just entered the water emerged in a panic, struggling to get back to the boat. There's something down there, he shouted, his face pale with terror. Something big, moving in the depths. Chaos ensued. Police officers rushed to help the diver, while the crowd backed away in panic. Amanda stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the lake's surface. For a moment, she could have sworn she saw something moving beneath the dark waters. Something large, sinuous, and definitely not human. When the commotion subsided and the waters calmed once more, Amanda realized she was trembling. The reality she knew seemed to be disintegrating before her eyes, replaced by a world where ancient legends came to life, and the impossible became terrifyingly real. With trembling hands, she took out her notepad and began to write. One thing was certain. There was much more to this story than she could have imagined, and she was determined to uncover the truth, no matter how frightening it might be. The sun was already setting when Amanda finally returned to the inn, exhausted and with her head spinning. She sat on the bed, her laptop open in front of her, the day's notes scattered around her like pieces of a macabre puzzle. "This is madness," she murmured to herself, massaging her temples. As a renowned investigative journalist, Amanda had covered cases of corruption, heinous crimes, and natural disasters, but nothing had prepared her for what she found in Misty Valley. Her editor had laughed when she first mentioned the story. "A monster in a lake, Amanda. You're wasting your talent. That's tabloid material, not serious journalism." But something compelled her to continue. Maybe it was the terrified look of the diver, or the whispers of the locals, or perhaps it was that unsettling feeling that there was something in the depths of Dark Lake, something that defied logic and reason. A notification sound snapped her out of her thoughts. It was a text message from an unknown number. "Don't mess with what you don't understand. Leave while you still can." Amanda felt a chill run down her spine. Who could have sent that, and why? Determined not to be intimidated, she put her phone away and left the room. She needed some fresh air and perhaps more information. The inn's lobby was nearly empty, except for a group of locals gathered in a corner, talking in low voices. When Amanda approached, silence fell over the group. "Good evening," she said, trying to sound friendly. "I'm Amanda Smith, investigating the recent events at the lake. Could someone tell me more about what's going on?" The exchanged glances between the locals were a mix of fear and distrust. "There's nothing to tell," said a middle-aged woman. Avoiding Amanda's gaze, "Accidents happen. 3 disappearances in a month are not just accidents," Amanda insisted. "Don't you find it strange?" An older man with a faded cap stood up abruptly. "Listen here, city girl. We don't need you poking around old wounds and spreading stories. Some things are better left alone." "But what if there's something truly dangerous in the lake? Shouldn't we investigate? Warn the authorities?" The group exchanged nervous glances again. It was then that the young woman, not much older than Amanda, spoke up. "My grandmother used to say the lake has an ancient hunger, that sometimes it wakes up and needs to be fed." "Clara," the man with the cap scolded her. "Don't speak nonsense." But Amanda had already caught the genuine fear in the girl's eyes. "What else did your grandmother say, Clara?" Before Clara could respond, the group quickly dispersed, casting warning looks at the young woman. Amanda was left alone in the lobby, more confused and intrigued than ever. Back in her room, Amanda looked out the window at Dark Lake. The full moon reflected on the water's surface, creating a silver path that seemed inviting and threatening at the same time. At that moment, Amanda made a decision. If no one in town would talk, she would have to discover the truth on her own. Tomorrow she would explore the lake, no matter how dangerous it was. As she prepared to sleep, Amanda did not notice the pair of glowing eyes watching her from the shadows across the street, nor did she hear the soft sound of something large moving in the lake's waters, as if answering a silent call. Dawn arrived with a thick mist that covered Misty Valley like a shroud. Amanda woke up before sunrise, determined to start her investigation early. Equipped with a waterproof camera, a recorder, and a notebook, she headed to the shores of Dark Lake. The The morning stillness was disturbing. Not even the birds dared to break the silence hanging over the dark waters. Amanda felt a chill run down her spine as she walked along the muddy shore, her eyes alert for anything unusual. Then she saw something that made her stop abruptly. Half buried in the mud, an object glimmered faintly in the dim morning light. Cautiously approaching, Amanda crouched down to get a better look. It was a wristwatch, old but still working. The glass was cracked, and the leather strap worn by water. With trembling hands, she picked it up, noticing an inscription on the back. For Tom with love. 1980. Amanda's heart raced. This was undoubtedly the watch of the missing fisherman. But how had it ended up here, so far from where his boat was found? As she examined the watch, a movement in the water caught her attention. For a moment Amanda swore she saw something large moving beneath the surface, leaving a trail of ripples. But when she looked again, the water was still as a black mirror. Swallowing hard, she continued her search. Not far from there, she found something even more disturbing. Marks on the muddy shore. They were not human footprints, nor those of any animal she could recognize. They were deep grooves in the mud, as if something huge and heavy had dragged itself out of the water. With trembling hands, Amanda took photos of the marks and made detailed notes. Her initial skepticism was quickly giving way to a growing and irrational fear. Determined to find more evidence, she followed the strange marks. They led her to a small cove hidden by dense trees. The air there seemed colder, denser, as if it were laden with an ancient and malevolent presence. It was then that Amanda saw something that made her freeze in horror. Hanging from a low branch, swaying gently in the morning breeze, was a piece of soaked fabric. As she approached, she realized with a shudder of terror that it was part of a shirt. The same shirt Tom was wearing when he disappeared. The fabric was torn and stained, not just with mud, but with something darker, more sinister. Amanda didn't need to be a forensic expert to recognize the stains of dried blood. With her heart pounding in her chest, she took more photos and collected the fabric as evidence. At that moment, she heard a sound that made her freeze to the bones, a low, guttural growl like an underwater roar coming from the lake's depths. Amanda turned slowly, her eyes wide with fear fixed on the water's surface. For a terrifying moment, she saw two glowing points shining in the depths like hungry eyes watching her. Then, as quickly as they appeared, they vanished. Panic took hold of her. Amanda ran back to town, her discoveries safe in her bag, but her mind in complete chaos. She knew she had found something that proved the disappearances were not mere accidents, but the closer she got to the truth, the more Amanda wondered, did she really want to discover what lurked in the depths of Dark Lake? And if she did, would she survive to tell the tale? Night fell over Misty Valley like a suffocating shroud. Amanda was in her room at the inn, the evidence she had collected spread out on the bed. Tom's watch, the blood-stained shirt fragment, the photos of the strange marks in the mud. Everything pointed to something beyond human comprehension. But it wasn't enough. She needed more, needed to see with her own eyes. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, Amanda made a decision she knew was dangerous, possibly fatal. She would go to the lake that night. Dressed in dark clothes and carrying a backpack with equipment, including a powerful flashlight, a night vision camera, and a small knife, Amanda sneaked out of the inn. The streets were deserted. An oppressive silence hung in the air. The full moon shone in the sky, casting elongated shadows that seemed to writhe and move on their own. When she reached the lake's shore, Amanda felt the weight of fear in her stomach. The water's surface was calm, black as obsidian, reflecting the moon like a giant watchful eye. Taking a deep breath, she turned on the night vision camera and began filming, narrating her observations in a low voice. It's almost midnight. I'm on the north shore of Dark Lake. The water is strangely still. There's no wind, no sounds of nocturnal animals. It's as if all of nature is holding its breath. Amanda walked slowly along the shore, her eyes alternating between the camera and the water's surface. It was then that she saw it, a subtle movement, like a ripple in the water approaching the shore. Her heart raced. With trembling hands, she focused the camera on the water. There's something moving, something big. It's coming towards me. Suddenly, a few meters from where she stood, something emerged from the water. It wasn't a face or a recognizable head, but a dark, scaly mass with protuberances resembling tentacles. And at the center of that mass, two eyes glowing like burning embers were fixed directly on her. Amanda stifled a scream, her body paralyzed with terror. The creature, for there was no other word to describe it, began to drag itself out of the water, revealing a serpentine and monstrous body. At that moment, all of Amanda's skepticism shattered. The legend was real. The monster of Dark Lake was right there in front of her, and it was coming for her. With superhuman effort, Amanda managed to move. She turned and started running, terror giving wings to her feet. Behind her, she could hear the wet and heavy sound of the creature dragging itself along the shore, pursuing her. Running blindly through the darkness, Amanda stumbled over a root and fell. The camera flew from her hands, landing a few meters ahead. Desperate, she crawled towards the equipment, knowing it was her only proof. When her fingers touched the camera, she felt something cold and viscous wrap around her ankle. Looking back, she saw a dark, glistening tentacle coiling around her leg. With a scream of terror, Amanda kicked frantically, managing to free herself for a moment. Grabbing the camera, she got up and ran like never before. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Amanda reached the city's lights. Looking back, she saw only the calm waters of the lake. The creature had disappeared, but she knew it wasn't a nightmare. It was real. Trembling uncontrollably, Amanda leaned against a light post, trying to catch her breath. She had done it. She had seen the monster and survived to tell the tale. But as she walked back to the inn, a terrible reality hit her. No one would believe her. And worse, now that she had seen the creature, would it leave her alone? With unsteady steps, Amanda returned to her room, knowing her life would never be the same. The truth she had sought was now a heavy and dangerous burden, and Dark Lake, she knew, held even more terrible secrets she needed to uncover. The sun had barely risen when Amanda, with deep dark circles under her eyes and still trembling hands, sneaked into Misty Valley's municipal archive. Using her journalist credentials and a good dose of persuasion, she gained access to the town's oldest records. The smell of mold and old paper permeated the air as Amanda rummaged through dusty boxes and yellowed files. Her hands moved frantically, driven by fear and urgency to find answers. Then her eyes caught something, a file marked Project Abyss, Confidential. With a racing heart, she opened the folder. What Amanda found made her blood run cold. Documents dated from 1952 detailed a secret government project conducted in the depths of Dark Lake. Experiments with abyssal creatures, attempts to create biological weapons using DNA from unknown species found in the lake's deepest parts. Her hands trembled as she turned the pages. Reports spoke of containment incidents, of creatures that escaped and were never recaptured. And then she saw something that made her gasp. A black and white photo, grainy and blurry but unmistakable. It was the same creature she had seen the night before. A sudden noise made her jump. Footsteps approached, quickly. Amanda took photos of the documents with her cell phone and replaced the file, her heart pounding in her chest. The door opened, revealing the wrinkled face of the archivist. "Miss Smith, Is everything okay in there?" Amanda forced a smile. "Yes, just researching the local history. Fascinating." Leaving the archive, Amanda felt the weight of the truth on her shoulders. The lake monster wasn't a legend nor a natural phenomenon. It was a man-made creation, an experiment that had gone terribly wrong. But her investigation was far from over. If the government was behind this, why were the experiments abandoned? And more importantly, who else in Misty Valley knew about it? Determined to find answers, Amanda headed to the one place she thought she could get them: old Ezekiel's house. The wooden cabin on the outskirts of town looked abandoned, but Amanda could feel eyes watching her. She knocked on the door. "Ezekiel? It's me, Amanda. I need to talk to you. It's about the lake, about what really happened here." After a long silence, the door creaked open. Ezekiel stared at her with tired, fearful eyes. "Come in, girl," he said in a raspy voice. "But remember, some truths are too dangerous to know." Amanda entered, feeling she was about to dive even deeper into Misty Valley's dark secrets. The revelations to come, she knew, would change everything, and as the door closed behind her, Amanda couldn't help but wonder if she had gone too far in her search for the truth. Outside, the waters of Dark Lake rippled gently, as if something in the depths had stirred, sensing its secrets were about to surface. Night was falling over Misty Valley when Amanda emerged from Ezekiel's house, her mind a whirlwind of shocking emotions and information. The old man had confirmed her worst suspicions and revealed even more. The government had not only created the creature, but still maintained a secret facility deep in the lake. With determined steps, Amanda headed to the pier. She knew what she was about to do was madness, but she had no choice. The truth needed to come out, and she was the only one who could make it happen. She found a small boat docked, and with trembling hands untied it. The engine roared in the night's stillness as she moved away from the shore, entering the black waters of Dark Lake. The moonlight danced on the water surface, creating deceptive shadows. Amanda kept her eyes fixed on the spot Ezekiel had indicated, an area of the lake where he said the underwater facility was located. Suddenly, the engine sputtered and died. Amanda tried to restart it in vain. The oppressive silence that followed was broken only by the gentle lapping of the water against the boat's hull. Then she felt it, a vibration in the water, as if something immense was moving in the depths. Her heart raced when she saw two glowing lights emerging from the darkness below, rising rapidly toward her. "No, no, no," Amanda murmured, frantically searching for something to defend herself. With a violent splash, the creature burst from the water beside the boat. It was even larger and more terrifying than Amanda remembered. Tentacles rose menacingly, dripping a viscous, shiny substance. Amanda screamed, the sound echoing across the lake. In a desperate act, she grabbed the oar and swung it at the creature. The impact reverberated through her arms, but seemed to have no effect on the monster. A tentacle wrapped around her leg, pulling her out of the boat. Fighting the panic, Amanda clung to the boat's edge. "I won't die like this," she thought determinedly. At that moment, a deafening roar filled the air. Powerful lights illuminated the scene. From helicopters. Amanda could hardly believe what she saw. Men in special diving suits jumped into the water, armed with what appeared to be advanced stun guns. The creature released Amanda, turning its fury toward the newcomers. A chaotic battle ensued. Flashes of light, monstrous roars, and human screams filled the air. Amanda found herself in the middle of the confrontation, desperately trying to stay afloat. Then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. The creature, struck by multiple shocks, sank into the depths with a final agonizing roar. Strong hands pulled Amanda into one of the helicopters. Still in shock, she found herself face to face with a man in a suit, his expression grave. "Miss Smith," he said, his voice cutting through the noise of the rotors. "You have no idea how much you've complicated things, but perhaps it's time for the truth to come out." As the helicopter moved away from Dark Lake, Amanda looked at the now calm waters. The story she came to find was much bigger and more dangerous than she ever imagined, and now, for better or worse, she was at the center of it all. Dark Lake had kept its secrets for decades, but that night, under the determined gaze of a brave journalist, its mysteries finally began to emerge from the depths. The rising sun cast its first rays over Misty Valley when Amanda finally returned to town. The last 24 hours had been a whirlwind of revelations, interrogations, and decisions that would change her life forever. Sitting on a bench in the central square, Amanda watched the residents start their daily routines, oblivious to the drama that had unfolded the night before. Her laptop was open in front of her, the cursor blinking at the beginning of a blank document. How to tell a story that defied reality itself. The man in the suit, who introduced himself as Agent Rodriguez from an ultra-secret government agency, had been surprisingly frank after the lake incident. Project Abyss, as it was called, began as a marine research initiative in the 1950s. But what they found in the depths of Dark Lake was beyond the scientific understanding of the time. The creature, or rather the creatures, for there was more than one, were the result of experiments that fused abyssal species, DNA with advanced technology. The goal was to create underwater biological weapons, but the project went terribly wrong. For decades we kept the creatures contained, Rodriguez explained. But recently something changed. They became more aggressive, more intelligent. Amanda typed furiously, the words flowing like the lake's waters. Her story wasn't just about monsters and government conspiracies. It was about the limits of science, human arrogance, and the price of progress at any cost. As she wrote, Amanda reflected on Misty Valley's fate. The town would be evacuated, the lake drained for an environmental cleanup. Residents would receive generous compensations, and the promise never to reveal what they knew. But what about her? Agent Rodriguez had been clear. Her story would be published, but with adjustments. A deal was struck. Partial truth in exchange for her safety, and the promise of access to future, interesting government projects. Amanda knew she was walking a fine line. Revealing too much could be dangerous, but hiding the truth went against everything she believed in as a journalist. Finally, after hours of writing and rewriting, she finished her article. It wasn't the complete story, but it was as close to the truth as she could get without putting lives at risk. With a deep sigh, she clicked send. Within hours, the world would know about the events in Misty Valley, or at least the version she could tell. As she closed her laptop, Amanda noticed old Ezekiel walking slowly through the square. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. Some secrets, they both knew, would remain forever in the depths. Amanda stood up, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Her quest for truth had changed not only her life, but potentially the course of history. And as she left Misty Valley, casting one last look at the now seemingly calm waters of Dark Lake, Amanda knew her journey was far from over. For in the world of shadows and secrets she now inhabited, every answer only led to more questions. And somewhere in the unexplored depths of other lakes and oceans, who knew what other horrors awaited discovery? The mystery of Dark Lake had been partially unveiled, but Amanda Smith knew her true mission was just beginning, and with that certainty she left, leaving behind a town on the brink of great changes, and carrying the burden of knowledge that few could bear. 2 years had passed since the events at Dark Lake. Amanda Smith's article had caused a worldwide furor, sparking heated debates about scientific ethics, government secrets, and the limits of underwater exploration. Misty Valley, now a ghost town, remained surrounded by barbed wire fences and restricted area warnings. The lake had been drained, leaving behind a lunar landscape of dried mud and buried mysteries. Amanda, in turn, had become a controversial figure in journalism, celebrated by some as a hero of truth, criticized by others as an irresponsible sensationalist. Her life was a constant balance between revealing the truth and protecting the secrets she had promised to keep. On a rainy night, sitting in her new apartment in a big city, Amanda received an encrypted email. The sender was unknown, but the message made her heart race. Operation Abyss is not over. Deep Lake, Siberia. They have evolved. We need you. Attached was a sonar image showing something immense moving in the depths of a frozen lake. Amanda stared at the screen, feeling the familiar mix of fear and excitement course through her veins. She knew she should ignore it, move on with her life, but the memories of Dark Lake, the glow of those eyes in the depths, called out to her. With trembling fingers, she began typing her response, knowing she was once again diving into dangerous and unexplored waters. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, in the frozen depths of a Siberian lake, something ancient and terrible stirred, patiently awaiting the arrival of those who dared to disturb its millennial slumber. The story of Dark Lake had ended, but a new, even darker one was about to begin. The story of Dark Lake is just a drop in the ocean of mysteries that surround our world. In every small town, behind seemingly tranquil waters, terrible secrets await discovery. The horror Amanda Smith faced may have been partially revealed, but its ripples continue to spread, touching lives and altering realities in ways we can barely comprehend. Stay tuned for the next tale by Draven Nocturnus, where new government experiments, abyssal creatures, and underwater horrors await those brave or foolish enough to dive into their depths. Remember, sometimes the real terror is not hidden in the depths of a mysterious lake, but in the shadows of human ambition and the relentless pursuit of forbidden knowledge. Until the next night of nightmares, when the waters stir again and the secrets of the depths find new explorers to haunt. For in every drop of water, in every reflection on the surface of a placid lake, there may be a world of horror waiting to be discovered.